Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Bi-Weekly Update, where we talk about what's important. Today, we're going to have a special segment by Lisa Sheridan about the Queen. We're going to have Mike's Minute, Ken's Corner, and Zach's Facts. So we look forward to an awful lot of content today, but what I'm going to try to do is keep mine relatively brief, if I may. I'm going to start with Going Big. Going Big is about experience, family, rejuvenation, fall. Those are things I'm really grateful for right now. How about we go to Ken?
Oh, thank you, Chris. Good morning, everybody. Good to be here with you all as usual. Mine goes out to Mr. Kohler, passed away a couple weeks ago. Very much an icon in the state of Wisconsin, very much an icon maybe across the nation in some eyes as well. But when I was in college, I got a job offer to go be a private or a butler at a private membership club called Riverbend up in Kohler, Wisconsin. And that opportunity was given me by the Kohler family, which was pretty amazing. So that really shaped where I am sitting today, meeting Chris along the way, being in finance. I was talking to some of the members there, and they really got me excited about retirement planning, investment planning. And that's where it really all started many years ago when I was just a kid. And so I just want to say thank you to the Kohler family for that opportunity, because it really has shaped who I am and why I sit in the seat I sit today and be able to help all of you on this journey of retirement planning. So my gratitude is out to the Kohler family.
Thank you, Ken. And also rear ends everywhere. Thank Mr. Kohler as well. I appreciate that. How about Zach?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. If any of you were on the webinar a few weeks ago, kind of shared the experience I had through volunteering and through giving back to the community, the Kinship Community Food Center. And the next one that I'll lead with our fitness communities downtown is this Saturday. So just extremely blessed, extremely humbled to be part of that people allow me to be part of that, and just really can't wait for Saturday.
Awesome. Thank you very much. How about Michael? You go big.
Thanks, Chris. I'm grateful for Northern Wisconsin and tradition. This upcoming weekend, I'm going to be heading up north for an annual fishing trip that has been going on way before my time. So we're up to about 40 years with this group going up every single year, and they've kept track of every single statistic since the very beginning. And specifically, we're targeting muskies up there. And so, anybody who's fished for them knows that, just seeing one is an accomplishment for the day. So every time that one was seen, one was caught, we have an entire log of it and 40 years worth of history that we reflect on every single year up there. So it's just a very cool thing. And it's something that I'm looking forward to continuing to enjoy and sharing with those who can join us in the future.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And Lisa, I'll have you, how about your gratitude as well? Your go big.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, it kind of goes into hand with what I'm going to be talking about regarding the Queen, and knowing that I'm grateful that we actually got to celebrate the 70th Jubilee with her earlier this year, and that she was able to see how much she meant to the people. And for her, that we think that she put the great in Great Britain. So it was just grateful to have grown up with having her for that length of time, and what a woman and what a country she did. So just grateful for that. And it kind of goes into what I'll be talking about in a little bit. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Lisa. I appreciate that. Well, let me start today with a little bit of I'd say something that is probably on everyone's mind. And we've talked about this. I want to say 3 words, faith, patience, and discipline. It's never been stronger than now. And I actually want to look at the word endurance. When you look up the word endurance, it is about strengthening, getting through, being strong enough to see through something while situations are difficult. It couldn't really be much more apropos than right now. If you were peppering yourself with news or news articles, the news is very, very negative right now. There's a lot going on. You'll find also when you go to the grocery store, food prices are running from 50 to 80% higher in many cases, which is another thing as well. But as I look at faith in the future, patience, really to get through times like this, and the discipline to stick to a plan, those are 3 words that are ringing true. And what I want to do is really talk about that. And right now, there's a couple other factors with endurance, not just the market. Maybe it's enduring something you're going through. Maybe it's enduring ragweed pollen, which has come out in the last week or two, which many of you talked about as well. Maybe it's enduring something personal you have, but endurance is extremely important. Some of the things I really wanted to touch base on, and we'll talk about this, is inflation is out there. The Fed just the other day has been very hawkish about inflation. They're raising 75 basis points at a time. And just on I think it was Tuesday, the market fell, significantly, because instead of inflation report being down 0.1, so deflating a little bit, it was actually up 0.1. So that tiny bit of difference caused everybody to freak out. But that's showing you that there's a lot of emotion out there right now. That's showing there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of people out there who are watching that data really, really closely. But what I want to do is I really wanted to look at something. I think if you're looking really today, I think this is William Goldman, so Metro Goldwyn Mayer. He wrote a bunch of great songs there, a bunch of great movies, I guess I should say. He said this, it was kind of an interesting one. He said, nobody knows nothing. Now, he went over his whole career, 80 or 90 years. He had some of the biggest hits in TV and movies ever. And he realized that nobody knows nothing. What does that basically mean? Well, back when, remember, Russian troops were actually on the border, and people wrote all over hundreds of millions of words about, they'll never invade Ukraine. They'll never invade Ukraine. And nobody knew that they did. Now, also, how about all the words were written that, oh, they'll just roll right over Ukraine. They'll own it in, with a week. Well, that hasn't happened either. This nobody knows nothing is extremely important, because I think a lot of people believe that these predictions of the future are actually things that will happen. And these are just probabilities. For anybody here now looking at the probability of Pakistan being 1/3 underwater. So Pakistan has had incredible monsoons. They're 1/3 underwater. I think it might be 3 to 6 months to actually dry out and actually get back to some of the villages that are actually underwater. You want to look at horrific as well. Those things are down to your basic needs. But when it comes back to inflation, the things that are really fighting us, some of my clients have told me over time, oh, Chris, how do I endure this? How do I not pay attention? How about things like paying attention to other things, like your family, yourself, maybe doing the workouts you needed to, reading good books, vacations, projects, volunteering. There are extreme valuations in markets, and they will happen on a pretty consistent basis. The markets will always go to extremes. A couple of things I look at too is exogenous weather events are very similar to exogenous market events. Nobody predicted the fact that COVID would come up and really 100-year pandemic would hit, right? And we would run into a correction that in 2 months we were down 1/3. And 6 months later, we had not only erased that, we had eclipsed it to the upside. So looking at a lot of these things, these unpredictability and the endurance to get through it, history has shown, if you go back to statistics, markets always correct. They always recover. That's been the case and thus shall be. Now, we don't know anything about the future, so I can't say, hey, this is exactly how it'll happen next time. But I do believe the endurance is extremely important. I just wanted to say a thing. I wrote a little something about this. Barry Bannister actually wrote this one. He said, the stock market will find your weakest personal trait and then do everything in its power to use it against you. So be careful with that. We see it. You bring it up to us. We want to continue to help you endure it. That's one way as well. This is another one. The untreated sewage that is on CNBC will certainly be compounded by others, well-meaning, but just as uninformed about the future. Your brother, your neighbor, that guy or gal in the supermarket, the person at the gas station, that person at the club, something you just read, somebody you met, that guy who's an advisor down the street. They'll all give you the gloom and doom, and it's easy to listen to right now. Be careful. Protect yourself. They're going to predicting the worst thing ever since fill in the blank, whatever. So just be careful of that. We've seen it over time. This is something I want to give you perspective on. So endure is very careful. Be careful and protect yourself and the plans and your plan from this onslaught of, I'd actually say, this war against those who plan and stick to it. This is the time to stick to your plan. This is a war against you doing that. I want to make sure you understand we're here to support you with that. My perspective is to offer you this. I've been through this before with many of you clients, and if you're newer, these are the times that enduring through this is what gets you the long-term return that matches the plan that you're working on. As we look at this, those who endure typically are the ones who win in the end, at least historically. But as I said before, nobody knows nothing. So I'll leave it with that. So what I'd like to do right now is there's some very important things going on in the country that birthed us, if you will, and that's in Great Britain. We had a 70-plus year monarch who was a wonderful, wonderful woman that I'd like to have Lisa come on and give us some insights about what she sees going on. She can give us some great insights and hear about what's happening in the British procession and some of the thoughts that she has. So Lisa, why don't you give us some enlightenment, please?
Thank you. I don't know whether I'm going to enlighten many people, but I think it's giving, hi guys anyway, a perspective from somebody who was born and raised there and is an English citizen and part of Great Britain, because a lot of Americans, even though a lot of people love the royal family, they, you know, it's a big entertainment. It's actually it's different for those who grew up in it than the Americans. It's not just a celebrity or, you know, sign of that. I can honestly say it's one of the saddest and most momentous turning points in my life and in the history of Great Britain. The Queen just had like an aura of invincibility, and now it's just been shattered. You know, we're just like, we're learning to just live with the country without her. I know we're going to have a new king now, King Charles. And to me, it was more than just an institution. It was our identity. It's who we were, and it's a complete blow to our national psyche. It's hard to explain to anyone who didn't grow up that way. Honest to God, you know, because I've lived my life along with many other Great Britons in the world under her reign, and she just devoted herself, not her choice either, remember that, to a life of service in the country, and you know, dedication to duty that she had with stoicism and that stiff upper lip that, you know, I have, right? So you know, so in living your life under that scrutiny of a close lens, and, you know, going through pandemics and national disasters and terrorism, and the way she brought the country and the monarchy into the 21st century, how she did all that. She, you know, she was one of Britain's longest reigning monarchs, yes, but she was the second longest reigning monarch in the world. So it's a big thing, you know. And I know people sometimes say to me, you know, what's the big deal? You know, it's hard to explain to them. You know, I do have it on. Chris is very generous and lets me have it on the television, because it's a huge part of history. You know, you know, wherever you views on the royal family or wherever you are in the world, this is history before our very eyes that is happening right now. So it's a pretty big deal. And right now, we've got the webinar on, which I'm sure everyone is watching, rather than watching the procession of the coffin going from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey, where she'll lay in rest now at Westminster Abbey. And it is open to the public. People at Westminster Abbey in the palace side can go and pay their respects, and hundreds of thousands of people will go and pay their respects. They can walk past the coffin until she gets the funeral on Monday. So it's a very special time for people over there. So it's quite crazy, but
so Lisa, is it true that the royal family's really become, it's the fiber of many people in Great Britain? I mean, it's really part of who you are growing up. I think that's the difference too, where she's not just a figurehead. She was a very part of who the national identity was, and,
correct.
and the world policy.
Very much.
She had, yes, it was much more than just a figurehead.
Correct, yes. And, you know, people don't realize that, you know, obviously we have the politicians and parliament and everything like that, the government and the prime minister, and, you know, but, you know, everything gets run through by the Queen. I mean, she could, I'm pretty sure the head of state, she could, if she really was against anything. I mean, back in the days she did. It's just crazy to think the changes that she's created over she turned it around, where, you know, back in the 70s and 80s, there were not many people, everyone wanted to get rid of the monarchy. And, you know, she really turned it all around as to, it's part of our identity. It really is. And so, yeah, it's a special time, I think. I mean, it's sad, but it's definitely special. I mean, we could possibly see in our lifetimes, mine, my daughter's, 2 coronations. I mean, King Charles is going to be coronation in a couple of months or whenever they end up doing it, and then obviously Prince William. So we're gonna, it's this very special time. It's hard not to be there with everybody, but you know, that's why we have television. So
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. And we appreciate and mourn with you as well. I think that's a super important part of history, a piece part of you and your family and then the nature of Great Britain. So it always comes to an end. The one thing we all share is this end, so celebrating someone's end is really maybe a little bit of celebrating our own that comes at some point in time as well. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. Well, with that, let's travel back to some of the markets as well and some of the things you're interested in that side of the equation. What I'd like to do is bring it over to Mike's Minute. Mike, what have you been doing in research? So I come in the other day and it's about 8 o'clock in the morning and Mike is sitting outside on a chair with a couple of 2 or 3 wholesalers. He's been here the other day. So it's been a pretty active period, Mike. What do we have going on?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So specific to the conversation I had yesterday, I was kind of talking about money markets and, the opportunity that kind of exists there. It's something that hasn't been, it's been pretty much earning 0.00 nothing, as I've heard pretty much, Ken and you say. But until recently, where the Fed has started to increase interest rates, there's a real, kind of a safe harbor for cash there that could give you a little bit more return. So that's what that discussion was centered on. And in turn with that, we talked a little bit more about inflation. And to expand a little bit more on your thoughts earlier regarding the surprise, as they've been calling it, with a greater than expected increase in inflation month over month and year over year. Some of the interesting points is what's actually led to that, because we all go out, we drive, we see gas prices actually coming down. And that's a direct reflection of kind of where inflation's going. But in this case, the 5% detractor that was the falling gas prices was outdone by food, which has come on higher at 11.4% year over year gain, or increase, I should say, from that matter. Services is also up, shelter. Transportation is actually turning into more of a deflator, with a continued decrease in airline fares of 4.6% month over month. So, and then new vehicle prices are actually up. So there's a couple different things. There's things moving in all directions, which kind of add up to that surprise that we had at the end of the day. And then there were 2 terms, we keep hearing this, what is a hawkish Fed? So there's 2 ways that, we hear the Federal Reserve being described. And in times of high inflation, they are described as being hawkish because they are actively trying to figure out a way to make inflation slow down the best that they can. So if you think about a hawk being a carnivore, being a hunter, that's what they're doing. They're doing something actively. The other way you can hear the Fed being described, and this is how they were sort of described throughout, the 2010s, it was being dovish. And being dovish, you can think of a dove, a morning dove, something a little bit more peaceful, a little bit more quiet. It's something that when you approach and they're in the middle of the road, they take their sweet time getting out of your way. They don't worry about too much. So it's just the idea that right now we have a hawkish Fed, and not knowing exactly how they're going to react is what's creating the volatility in the markets. Right now, markets are pricing in after yesterday about an 0.8% increase in inflation. A lot of people think 0.75 is what will be the next one. I'm sorry, not inflation, increase in rates. But the prediction is 0.75 coming up. We'll see how that goes. If they're right, we'll see how the market reacts. And if they're wrong, we'll see how they react. A quote that I really like, and I don't know where it came from, but I heard it first from Chris Doty, was, "This is how it's been and how it will be." Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. Those are wise words. And I probably stole them from someone else if you heard them from me. Just FYI. Just don't know who in that case. What's interesting, I think, in this goal focus, we're goal focused, long-term, planning driven. We're here to help you and help people get through times like these. A 2-person 30-year retirement, somebody who's planning for retirement and a 30-plus year retirement. This is what we're here for. It's to get you through these and endure what's going on and to focus off of what's going on. These are temporary. The market looks at all of them, they price them in day to day. It's like a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing to the long-term plan. So Michael, thank you. I appreciate that. How about as we go to, how about Zach's facts? Zach, do we have any facts that we should know about as well?
Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate it. And just due to the time we have, we'll try to go through these really quickly for you guys. But one thing that we were floored with as we went through these numbers to prepare for today is that things on the 3-month outlook really actually are still really good, even with the last few weeks. So the kind of the theme for the things that I'll go through with you here today is just the power of perspective. So the S&P 500 on the year, about 17.5% temporarily down. In the last 3 months, still at positive over 5%. The Dow Jones, about 14.6% -0.4 on the year. In the last 3 months, +2.4. The NASDAQ, which is weighted more towards technology, temporarily down a little over 25%, but that's over 7.5 increase in the last 3 months still. The Russell 2000, which is smaller sized companies, 18.4, temporarily down on the year. On the 3 month, +7.3%. On the growth portion, and over the last few years, we've talked about the separation between growth and value, especially on the smaller size company size. And that's still the case, but on the growth side, 23% temporarily down, but in the last 3 months, small cap growth is actually up 12.6%. So if we did any conversions, we're seeing in the short term some really big benefits of those if we were converting securities and it made sense for your scenario. On the value side of the smaller size companies, 14% temporarily down. In the last 3 months, 2.6% positive. International and emerging markets still lagging a little bit behind, 21% down for the year, and emerging markets 22% on the year. One real quick thing I wanted to show just to add to the power of perspective. There's just an interactive chart. I'll let it load here 1 second for you guys. And so this is looking at the S&P 500 on really since October of 2020. So for the last 2 years. So if we look at things on the shorter term, even looking at the start of the year, wow, if I put money away here, we're really down temporarily. Or if we're looking at the year to date, we're temporarily down. Or if we put money during the short term perspective side, if we looked at it even farther back, man, really flat for the last year. But when we click this button, add a little bit of perspective, and we go back to even just September of 2017, we look here, we're at an all-time high before leading into COVID, before we have that major correction that Chris mentioned, a 34% correction in 30 days. We have that drop. We look to where we are even today. That's still a 16% increase in the last 2 years, 2.5 years. If you told us in February of 2020 that we're gonna have a 16% uptick in the market between now and September of 2022, we'd probably be pretty darn happy about that overall with our scenario. If we click one more button and add even longer term perspective, you can see the dramatic difference. If we go back to 2007, we go to the end of October 2007, we're at an all-time high. The S&P 500 is just over 1,500. Today, it's almost about 4,000, even with a temporary pullback in the last few weeks. That's 150% increase since 2008. One of the things we hear most often is, especially if we're retired and we're not actively putting into a 401k anymore, is I don't have enough time to have this go back. That is extremely normal and understandable to think that way because we feel helpless in the sense of taking advantage of the market, but 15 years is still a relatively short window, even if we're looking at our own lives, but especially if we're looking at the legacy of our children or grandchildren or whatever your goal may be. So 150% increase since the market peak before the global financial crisis. We had the global financial crisis. We had Brexit. We had a 20% correction in September of 2018. We had the 34% correction with COVID in 2020, another 20% correction, and we still have had a 10% per year return over the last 15 years. So really the main point of today when we went through all these numbers together was just the power of perspective. I'll pass it back to you, Chris.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you, Zach. Thank you. So before I go to Ken, normally I tell some dad jokes, and I have some good ones, but they're unbelievable. They're about autumn, so I had to say that. I'll give you one at the very end. Thank you very much for the perspective, Zach. I appreciate that. But Ken, let me bring you on for a couple of planning ideas. What's going on in the side of the world that we should be paying attention to?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. And so when you look at the planning, I like to talk about the markets. It's really good. When we look at your scenario, we also want to factor in the markets, but we also want to factor in your long-term goals. We are goal focused. We are planning based. And a lot of you see, I'm going to pull up a visual here too. This is kind of like what Zach did. But this is some approved material from our planning department that we were able to find. And a lot of you have seen this before in our meetings. Sometimes we talk about it. Sometimes we show you. It's all important. And what this is, it's a tool that we have to really let you know that if you're on track or not. Okay. And when we go through these markets that we're going through right now, again, this is just an example that's been approved by Raymond James, but your scenario is your own scenario. We'll show you that. But really what it means is that when we go through temporary market downturns like this, are we still on track? These percentages of probability of success on your plan will move, but they don't move dramatically like we may think they may move. They may move 2 or 3 percentage points, maybe 4, maybe 5. It depends on how well we're funded for retirement. So this is good for in retirement to understand that your long-term plan for retirement is still on track, despite the fact that we are temporarily down right now. So it's a very important piece to keep your eye on this. And we're gonna go over this probably more and more as the markets are doing what they're doing right now. So again, we also can help you find out the impact on special spending, cars, family trips. I hear a lot about right now. You know, we can show you the impact on your plan if we decide to make those decisions together, right? Also, for someone who is not retired, this is a great tool to say, are we on track? We can also show you the impact of whether we stop contributing during a time like this, which we don't recommend. But we can show you the impact if somebody wanted to do that. We can also show the impact if somebody wanted to save more for their plan as well. Again, this is all about probability of success, and we hope to show you this, or at least talk about this in our meeting coming up with you, because this is the time that your plan matters the most. Our benchmark is your plan. If we can have a successful retirement and get through these times, that is a successful retirement, and that is all about your plan going forward. So I just wanted to bring that piece up to you guys, just a visual there for everyone to see. And that's one of our financial planning tools that we utilize.
Ken, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I think that's outstanding. So as I go here, I've got a good joke, if you will, about a mob boss and the 4 henchmen. It's winter, summer, spring, and autumn. And the mob boss calls him on to a meeting. He says, "Winter, I'm going to need you to stay cool under pressure," he said, patting his shoulder. Then there's you, Summer. If the heat comes too much for winter, please use that hot temper of yours to make sure that the cops remember who you're working for. As for you, Spring, he left, this operation's going to be a lot of green, so make sure that keeps growing. And then he turned to Autumn, stood up, walked away. Boss, he sputtered. "Well, what about me?" Boss turned back, shaking his head. "Sorry, Autumn, you're the fall guy." Anyway, I thought you could use that. Maybe kids would appreciate it, maybe adults would appreciate it, but I wanted to put in some humor, as I always do. I'll bring it back to one more serious point, and I'm going to read this as something that's a great piece we have. We've written a little bit about it, and it comes from one of our annual discussions about who we are. And it's very interesting. People look at this and say, "Chris, well, what's going on with all this stuff going on in the short term? What should we do?" I said, well, we'd like to say, once we have a plan put in place, we have a portfolio that's optimally put together to fund that. There's very few things that will change the portfolio unless the plan itself has changed and your goals have. It's a super important thing for you to know. So this implies, of course, that we would never contemplate making a change based on short or mid-term items that are going on, because your plan hasn't changed, nor your risk tolerance, nor your goals for what you're attempting to do. What's super important here, though, is if we do find a manager who is not doing what we expect them to do in this time, we will replace them. We will do rebalancing. We will do consistent maintenance on the portfolio. And part of that portion of the plan is what gets you to your goals, what adds and reduces risk in many cases as well. What I really wanted to look at here is, though, sooner or later, we must finally, and I wrote this down, infer from all this that all of our energy spent studying the economy and markets over the short to intermediate term are entirely wasted, since it can't be predicted. And then in the long term, superior companies will, as they always have, find ways to properly adjust regardless of circumstances. And at the end of the day, the market can't be forecast still. The market can't be timed still. The correct time to add one's long-term equity plan is when markets are down, or when you have the money, more importantly. The second thing is the correct time to pull money out of the market is when you need it, when you need money. That's when to pull money out of a plan. Thus, I like this statement. This one comes from Nick Murray. "This is all ye know on earth, and all ye shall need to know." Interestingly, as you go through it, it's a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing. There's a lot going on right now. We get it. There's tax law change, there's inflation, there's war, there's food prices going up here, there's famine around the world, there's crops being ruined. Those are a lot of things we'll have to adjust to. We're going to need to put more energy into getting water in the southeast or southwest. There's a lot of things going on. These are all opportunities. And historically, Warren Buffett says, if you bet against America, you're wrong most of the time. So with that, we have also today, Ashley, in the very end here, I'd like to just have her touch base and tell us what should we be paying attention to, Ashley.
Thank you, Chris. I'll just take a few moments to highlight a couple of things that we have going on as a Gentian team. Today we'll be hosting our September birthdays. So our team will be hosting a group of people from 11 to noon. So in case you do give our office a call, we will be hosting some of those celebrating their birthdays here in September. Next week, Thursday, or the first day of autumn, we will be hosting a virtual book club at 9:30 a.m. So if you have not already signed up, please check your bulletin to do so. Chris will be recapping the Love the Enemies book. If you haven't read the book, please feel free to join us anyway. He will also be revealing our next book for our book club coming up later this fall. If you haven't already registered for the Ladies and Gentian event, which is Wednesday, September the 28th, we encourage you to do so. We will be also having Chris on that Zoom call at 10 a.m. in regards to finding all things purpose, exploring our purpose, and expanding on our purpose. So we welcome Chris as our guest speaker for that. And then on Tuesday, October the 4th, we will be hosting a Appleton Fall Forum at Bridgewood Resort, and that will be held at 11 a.m. So again, please check your bulletin to RSVP for that. Thursday, October the 6th, we will be hosting our Milwaukee Fall Forum, and that will be hosted at 10:30 a.m. at Blue Mound Golf and Country Club. And please just take a peek at your emails later this afternoon, as we will have our latest Nick Marie piece coming out again in your emails later today. And back to you, Chris. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Well, with that, I know we've run a few minutes over. There's a lot to go over, and I appreciate your time and attention. I appreciate most of all your patience. Hopefully for us, in your case, we can offer you some perspective, some things that can kind of calm down all the information. I call it the untreated sewage of the media that's actually pouring out on people right now as well. It's difficult. It's not easy. We feel it, we see it, we understand it. So don't get us wrong. We're not immune to it. We just know how to respond to it versus react. The reactor will drop their plan and move on to something that they feel they need to do right now. The responder will actually respond in kind, consistent with their plan, call us, maybe need some reassurance, and then move forward and consistently stay with what we've decided. Anyway, I just want to offer that to you. Thank you tremendously for being clients. Gentian Retirement is here to help you plan, live, and give the appropriate written possible, or what's possible for you in retirement. With that, I want to thank you for our entire team here. Until 2 weeks from now, or if we see you before, be well. Thank you.